Yeah. Parkour! Hey guys, Jesse here with Chaos Tones once again, and today I'm going to show you this track that I did for my friends over at Alibi Music. It's an Argent-Metal track, I think is what they call it. Doom 2016, Mick Gordon style. They called me for a few of them, and I figured, well, hey, why not put this video together? They don't know that I'm doing this, but I think they'll be okay with it. And so I'm just going to go over the session, show you what I did, some of the things that I used, and yeah, that's about it. So let's check it out. Okay, so I'm going to start, let's just go over this session. I'm going to start from the bottom, actually, and work my way on up, and we'll just go through things that kind of make any kind of sense. Maybe they don't make sense, but anything of interest, and I'm just going to click on it and show you what it is and what it does and what it is and what it isn't. And let's just start here with the Hurons. Hurons are what I like to call them. A lot of times in the trailer world or the promo world, we call them Brahms, but that's boring to me, so I call them Hurons. Okay, that's a pretty standard, simple sound. So there's no additional plugins except for this. Now, once we get to the bus, we have the Omega transformer. And I love this plugin. I use it a whole hell of a lot. And it's just one knob. You turn up the gain, and then it gets louder. So you turn down the output. And that's about all there is to it. And I'll show you without it. And with. I have one other Huron sound, as I like to call it. And it's this, Killed by Death. And these are patches that I made in Serum, and they may or may not be available on the website. On the other end of this plugin, we have a ducker, as I like to call it. I call everything the wrong thing. It's a sidechain compression, and the track that is delivering the duck is this over here. And it's another Serum. I use Serum a lot. I should probably get number 2. It's free. But until then, I'm using number 1. I'm not going to solo that because I set the volume to 0 and then use that to trigger the compression all over this mix. And you'll see that it's a recurring theme. So those are the sounds that I have here. Let's hear them kind of together because sometimes that happens. Yeah, one gives a little bit of squelch and one gives a little bit of room. And so they're not always operating together. Rarely are they in this case, but sometimes they are. And so now you've heard that. I had a problem. I'll unhide this. And for some reason, this session isn't even that old. I started it late last year, and I'm just opening it again now. But for some reason, I couldn't find these samples here. Or Logic couldn't find them. I know where they're at, but, it is what it is. So instead, we're listening to the stem of this. So just so you know what's going on, I used Ferrum and I used Monument. And those are the only samples that I used. And it looks like I used Steam Hammer specifically for the reverb because I took down all the low end and a lot of the low mids here. Maybe those aren't low mids. Maybe those are just mids. And there's some other things that are going on. And this is on the bus. So this is for all these hits coming in. Anyway, I did use some patchwork. Pro L2. So there's a limiter on all of those. And so here's what they end up sounding like. I'll just give you one hit. And that Steam Hammer sample is definitely only being used for the reverb. And the reason I do this is because there's no overlap on the reverb. And so I can get the same exact reverb every time. Let's move on. This is another preset that I made in Serum. Let's hear it. Okay, and I got a whole bevy of plugins on it, and I can just take those off and you'll hear it, and it's a lot of low end comparatively. And honestly, I like that sound more, but for the greater good, I just turn all this stuff on, and let's go through it, actually. Less low end, less low mids, less mids, more highs. Yeah, okay. And then same thing here. If you don't know what soothe is just it looks at your resonant peaks and it tames those. It kind of knocks those down. Just kind of taking off more low end, more and more and more low end. I didn't want it. And then I'm hitting Decapitator. Just a little bit. Well, more than a little bit, actually, because Punish is on. And then I'm using a mono maker on everything under 196 to be exact. And it's not really all that important, but it does something. Okay, moving on. Where did I go? I got lost. And then there's a soft clipper on all of it, as if I hadn't mangled it enough. And then there's a tremolo on it that only operates over here. Here it is. Let's check it out. Yeah, so it's just kind of another ducker. I actually didn't use the sidechain compression on this one. I opted for the tremolo instead, and I just brought it up here. So that's the only place that I wanted it, and that's the only place I did that. So there you go. Let's see what this is. Basic saw. Yeah, about as basic and boring as you can get, but you know, it's not everything has to be complex. So there you go. Nothing really exciting about that. And I used the nollie bass on this because it's not that I was too lazy to play the bass on it. It's just I wanted something that was a little bit less organic sounding. And so I opted for this. Yeah, you solo that up and you're not fooling anybody. That's clearly not a real bass, but you know, that's the aesthetic that I wanted for this track. So there you go. That's the aesthetic. Works really well for this track. Let me go back to this meh synth. It's not entirely all that interesting. It's just a pulse thing, you know, but there's a lot of plugins on it, and there's Soothe, taming the low end again. By a lot. I'm using Omega Transformer again, and this is modulating the drive, but I'm not modulating the output to compensate. Okay, I'm tearing off some of the mids, and not even that much. I'm controlling the low end with the multiband. Yeah, it's not even that it's out of control. It's just I need more control. And then, of course, because the level is fluctuating so much because I didn't compensate for the volume on Omega, I'm just doing that with the limiter over here. And so you can see this thing going wild and crazy. Yeah. So that catches all the volume discrepancy there. And then I'm using this to, of course, duck the bass, the meh synth, underneath the kick drum. Okay, so that's all that is. And that's all the basses. There is actually one other thing. So I took the nollie bass and I doubled it with the basic saw at the end of this track. Yeah, okay. And then I also doubled it with just a sub. And this is, I'll show you that by itself. It's just a sub. And to be honest, that's a lot busier notationally than it should be for this kind of patch, but it is what it is. So that's the patch, and then with everything else. Just to fill out the low end that I wasn't getting from either of these. And so that's that. That's bass. Okay. Let's take a look at leads. Yes, let's take a look at leads then. I was confused because I have leads and lead guitars. Confused myself there for a second. Okay, I got a reverse ping. This is a standard trailer promo kind of thing. Yeah, boring. We've all heard it a million times. But it still works. I got a distorted synth thing. It's a melody that plays towards the end. All right, it's cool, it's noisy. I don't exactly know how I got so much noise in it. I love this plugin. This is just a filter, but I'm not using any of the actual filter properties. I'm using some of the cutoff and some of the resonance, but I'm mostly using it for drive. I'll show you that. Just kind of thicken it up and give it some of that, I don't know if it's really a vintage quality, but it gives it something, you know? Oh, okay, another boring preset. Here's Time's Up. Not everything has to be super crazy and wild and wacky. It's a very simple one. It's just, 4 octaves up. That's all. And I put that in unison with the reverse ping. Yeah. It's not really all that exciting. I have uppers and downers, quaaludes and speed. Yeah, a very boring riser, but it just kind of fits in. It's not trying to overpower anything. Let's see what default is. I have so many instruments called default in all my sessions. It's like a downer. That's my downer. So here we go. Basic and boring. A lot of boring stuff going on. So there's that. Let's check out guitars. Guitars are always fun. Okay, audio 3. Okay, so this is a capture that I took with the easy for me to say, the IK Multimedia Tonex. This is EVH 5150 that I got, and then I had my friend Jens Cruz mod it, and so I just decided that this was what I was going to use for this. And I EQ'd it, and it's got a fair amount of gain, but it's not really overly crazy. I mean, you can hear the difference between when it pulls back and when it's just a regular thing. Here are the EQ changes that I made to this. There's some mids that I took out. Let me get it without the sweep. And to be honest, I like it without these, but in the mix, this makes more sense. And there's a lot of stuff going on over here, but I'll get to that in a second. There is... Oh, what is this? Oh, I just printed this one. Wonder why I did that. What is this? Okay. All right, so. That's kind of cool. Okay, and I ended up using the Kemper for the left and right guitar sounds, and not the Tonics. I tried to use the Tonics on everything, but it wasn't standing out in a way that I really liked, so I chose to use the Kemper. But we can check out the Tonics, and there's a couple things that I did that I know I did that that stayed in the session. So let's look at that. Let's just go center. So I chopped the hell out of this section just because I only wanted the chugs and I wanted just the woo. I guess that's what I'll call it. The extra accoutrement there. And I didn't need it to be really organic. I wanted it to feel kind of robotic, so I just chopped the hell out of it. Anyway, so that's the Tonex. I didn't actually end up using that. I ended up using the Kemper, and here's what it ended up being. However, I did use the EQ. So this is honestly the EQ that I used coming out of Logic, reamping back into the Kemper, and it's ugly looking, but it gave a little bit of definition to the guitars that I kind of needed, I kind of wanted, and you know, it does make it ugly, but you know, not everything has to be pretty. All right, and I did that left and right too, so I think the same guitars are left and right. Okay, let's check out what's going on the bus here. Let's take the bus. Okay, tearing off a lot of the lows, some of the highs, more EQ. Yeah, just this. I think I was told to dip this one out because somebody found this frequency in my entire mix to be something that they didn't like, which I was very impressed by. If you can tell me in the full mix that guitars at 3120 need 7 dB pulled out of the mix, mad respect. Anyway, so then if there wasn't enough EQ and compression on things, I did this. It's a multi-band sidechain compression, just hitting only when the kick drum is going, apparently. Yep. And then Renaissance Axe, which I use a lot, just, you know, does a thing. All right, so you can hear that. Depending on your monitoring, it's doing something or not much. And just a little bit of limiting on it to keep the transients at bay. Maybe if I played all the guitars. Yeah, so it's not even doing anything right here. Lead guitars. Are you impressed much? Okay. Tore off the top end because I didn't need any of that. There's not a whole lot going on in the low end because I did that to it. So this has a really narrow band. But, you know, I don't want something like that taking up a lot of space. And then ROM is maybe or Room, however you say it, maybe my most overused reverb plugin. And so, yeah. Wow, what's really interesting is that I didn't use any kind of pedals here. And so we're just hearing that upper harmonic stuff happen because of what's happening in here. I don't know what's causing that, to be honest. That's kind of cool. And so this is basically just, let's see. This is doing the same as this. Really cool when they're combined. And so that's everything except for the drums. And for the drums, of course, I only used Deviant drums. We'll go through this. And we've already looked at the Ducker. Okay, so I've got an 808 that I used. Yeah. I've got a glitchy section. This looks like the busiest, so I'll just check this out. I just love how just dirty and ugly and devastated that sounds. It's just mean. And I've added a couple extra plugins to that. Let's check it out. Check it out. Okay, so a side chain compression. Okay. Yeah. Oh my god. Okay, there's the destruction. All right, I really went for it with this plugin. So, you know, the gain reduction is beyond 10 what this meter can show us. So, you know, it's doing that. That's where the fun is. Okay. And then it looks like I've got a tremolo. But it's only used here. Anyway, so let's check out the main drum part. Okay, so, you know, machine gun stuff. Taming the top end, taming the 200. Let's hear it without this. Yeah, I like it without that, but, you know, in the mix, I'm sure it makes sense. And then Gullfoss, if you don't have this plugin, you need this plugin. Just boosting a little bit at the top end. Just a little bit more presence on it so that it kind of cuts through a little bit better. Okay. Let's take a look at what's going on in the master. And actually, there's nothing going on in the master except for just visual stuff for me. These are plugins that I use on every session so that I can see what's going on. Meters, you know? I like meters. I like to see what's happening. Let's come back over here and listen. maybe try from here. Okay, anyway, there's that. And it's going over just a little bit. And so actually, what I did is I pulled back the bus neg 4 so I wasn't going over when I printed the stems. And I'll show you that actually. So that's not clear what I'm talking about, but it maybe will be. Maybe will be. So I have this hidden bus called stems. And if I hit this, usually it'll just it'll arm everything so that I can just hit record once and it will record all my stems all at once, and then I can make out mixes from those. This is everything that I turn in. And so I pulled these down neg 4, and so nothing's peeking over. And if we look over at full mix, hopefully I'm not a liar. Yeah, there's no danger of going over. So we're peaking somewhere around neg 3 with peaks and valleys and all things. So I hope that makes any kind of sense. If you want me to clarify any of that, just throw it in the comments. Let me know. And actually, that kind of concludes this. So if you want, talk to me in the comments. Let me know what you'd like to see and talk about. And, I'll go over whatever it is that you want to go over. I'll catch you on the next one.